This is the 11th episode of the character series from the Pages podcast. Previously on the Pages podcast.
Stock characters are your fictional characters in a particular genre of literature, theatre, or film that represent a type of conventional or cliche way of representing some characters in a way that they fit or play into a specific stereotype. Examples off the top of my head is Queen Bee types. You know when you watch high school movies.
Yeah, like they're always shaking their head. They're always angry.
So not all stories have a clear antagonist. Like in BoJack Horseman's case, there is no clear antagonist. Like who would you say is always there opposing BoJack in his story?
Himself.
He's basically the poster face for childhood trauma in human psyche. What does Mr. Peanut Butter actually represent? He represents a friendly, charismatic character that is symbolic of a dog.
Would you think Mr. Peanut Butter is like a people pleaser?
Exactly. Now we'll get to the heart of symbolism now. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
The thing is, a deuteragonist just used to capture every character around the main protagonist who is basically following the protagonist through his journey. If you had a best friend, your best friend would be your deuteragonist, I guess.
Exactly, I was about to say that.
The big question here is what combination of symbolic character makes up your own fatal flaws? As the author, Pamela Theresa quotes, she says, "Know thyself and all will be revealed." After all, you can't actually hide from yourself.
Yeah, sadly, we're stuck together in this place.
You are stuck with yourself. You
Yeah.
better love yourself because, you're stuck with you.
Yeah.
In the last episode, we dove into the final two ways of classifying characters by level of development and by role. We saw how the cast of BoJack Horseman fits into the boxes of round versus flat, dynamic versus static. We even explored the heavy symbolism each character carries. For example, BoJack as a vessel for generational trauma is one type, and then we have Princess Caroline as the face of hyper-independent workaholism. Then there's Diane, who represents all of the burdens of our moral consciousness. And Todd? Well, he's the personification of our directional uncertainties. And of course, we can't finish this without talking about Mr. Peanut Butter. He's the mascot for toxic positivity. I had a talk with Rita to try to understand if toxic positivity is actually a thing. But apparently, Mr. Peanut Butter proves that it is a thing. It is where we choose to smile even when reality is staring you in the face that there is nothing to be smiling about. Just like the typical dip your head in the sand, pretend I don't see the problem, and if I don't see it, then the problem doesn't exist. It's the sweeping everything under the rug. And after that, we pivoted into character classification based on the roles. We saw the protagonist, the antagonist, and the deuteragonist. And it was very eye-opening to see how BoJack is both the protagonist and the antagonist of his own story, while he is surrounded by so many deuteragonists that he kept taking for granted. So, what are we doing today? Today is our last episode, and we're rounding out the deck with the final key roles. We'll consider the foil, the ally, the love interest, and the narrator with a series of interesting conversations. Since this is our season finale on the character series, we're bringing everything home with a retrospective lens. So stick around for our upcoming Q&A session where Rita and I will break down the season's highlights and dive into your questions and comments, which are, of course, the true heartbeats of the show. We will also give you a sneak peek at what's coming next. If you are ready for one last ride through the waves of storytelling, welcome back to the Pages podcast. Let's see what the foil, ally, love interest, and the underrated narrator have in store for us through the therapeutic lens of BoJack Horseman. I'm your host, Betty, and Rita will be joining us shortly. Hi, Rita. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi.
This is 2026, and this is our sixth recording actually, but we have like multiple episodes that are more than 6 episodes. But this is our sixth recording.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to hear you again. But yeah, so what is our order of business? Today's recording is a continuation from this last episode recording that was about character classification based on roles. So we've done protagonist, antagonist, deuteragonist, and or psychic. And today we'll continue considering foil, ally, love interest, and narrator. So are we ready?
Yeah. Super excited.
Okay, so we are ready. So what is the foil character? What is the foil? These are characters that highlight the traits of a main protagonist by basically contrasting them. Your foil characters are I wouldn't say stark opposite, but by putting a foil character next to your main protagonist, you show how your main character differs from the foil. If your protagonist is someone with high moral compass, then their foil will be someone who has no problem compromising on anything. We see this a lot in fiction, but I think it's also glaring when we experience it in real life. Like that golden child in a family compared to the black sheep. Or even in our personal lives, we sometimes meet people who contrast us so deeply that it feels like, how can we coexist with these people? We wonder, how can we coexist? So, Rita, do you have any experience of people that in your own life that you want to share who you feel like are the foil of your own personality? Do you want to share any interesting one if you do?
Yeah, I do have, even within my friend group, right? There are people who are very different, and I still wonder how we're able to coexist. We
Right.
usually, we usually would, and even in the workplace also, it's just okay, hello, hello, hi, hi. If you ask the person, oh, maybe you say something funny, but they don't get it because they don't have the same sense of humor, or just looking at or just looking at both of us.
Rita, to be fair, nobody has your sense.
No,
Like, your sense of humor is a
there
little
are a
bit,
few weird, right?
it's a little bit eccentric, I would say. Okay.
A few people do, but it's very common in my own life actually to have people who are like very different, and then you have people who compare both of us, even within the same department, and like, how is it
Mm.
possible that both of you are still able to stay in the same space?
Okay. So, interestingly, the term foil actually comes from the practice of placing a shining metal foil behind a gem to make it stand out. Think about that. So, you
Mm,
take a metal foil, you put it behind a gemstone like a ruby or a sapphire or anything. And because of that foil behind the gemstone, the gemstone shines out more. It comes out more glowing. So, what does that tell you about a foil in a
mm,
story? It means that a foil exists to make the main protagonist pop out.
mm,
Do you get that? If you have a foil in your life, they would exist to amplify your differences, to amplify how you are different, how you are a different character in this experience, right? A foil, everything that the story wants to amplify about you by putting a couple of foils or one foil around you, it will just show that contrast will make you stand out more. Say, for example, you come from a family of regular heads and then you are like the weird one. Your family members will act as foil to you because by the fact that they are very regular and normal, you would always stand out. You would stand out every
mm.
time. If you are in a group of friends and everybody thinks one way and you have a completely different way of thinking that contrasts those other group of friends, you would pop out. So literally, your friends
Yeah.
around you will then be like that foil while you're like a gemstone glowing because of how different you are. So in BoJack, Mr. Peanut Butter is the ultimate foil of BoJack. So everybody, you don't need to like think too much about it. He's the sunny character to BoJack's cloudy days. While BoJack, he wallows in his trauma, what does Mr. Peanut Butter do? He uses toxic positivity. I don't know if that's even a thing, but toxic positivity to sweep everything
It's
under
a
the
thing
rug.
actually.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he literally cannot be left alone. That's Mr. Peanut Butter. He literally cannot be left alone because he's terrified of what he will find in the silence. Then you have Diane. she's also a foil to BoJack. But how is she a foil? She's a foil in a moral sense. She's the one who wants to get everything right. She tries to do the right thing. Meanwhile, BoJack tries to escape doing the right thing. She tries to take responsibility for her actions. Meanwhile, BoJack is like, nah, I cannot handle responsibility. When she and Mr. Peanut Butter were having an affair, she was the one that insisted that they tell the truth to Mr. Peanut Butter's fiancée slash girlfriend at the time, Pickles. So even though it was a painful experience for her to tell what they were doing, she insisted that we have to tell because the only way to be free from lies is to tell the truth. But if you think
Mhm.
about BoJack, when he slept with Todd's friend Emily, his first instinct was like, we need to keep this a secret. We need to hide. You can see how Diane contrasts BoJack. So between BoJack's hide the truth method and Diane's confess and face the music approach, which do you think is actually harder to live with in the long run, Rita?
I actually think hide the truth is way harder to live with because lies take a lot of brain power. Honestly, it takes a lot because you have to remember that you have to like back it up. And you cannot say one lie over and over again the same exact way. But you can just tell the truth. If you just done and done any day, anytime, if they wake you up from sleep, what happens? 2 times 2 is what? 4. It's just that easy. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's harder to hide the truth, actually. Just confess and face the music and move on.
That is true. I really love what you said about how the problematic thing about lies is that you need to keep up with a lie with other lies. Let's also consider one more interesting foil to BoJack, and that's Todd. I love how the main supporting character we see beside BoJack once the series fully starts was Todd. Literally, he was like, once we saw BoJack, the next character we saw was Todd. And he's a literal foil to BoJack. I feel like he's a character that really represents the foil of BoJack. Now, BoJack is a fully grown adult horse, slacking at home with not much to do but to relive his glorious days. And then there is Todd. Todd is a young lad, barely 20. He's crashing on BoJack's sofa, so he hasn't made it on compared to BoJack, who has actually made it in a way. And he has a very simple mind. He's so simple minded, and his head is full of hope. And he almost has little to no worries. Like the only worry he has is like being a responsible adult. And BoJack is his head is like a mess. He's always worrying about something that he can't deal. So when you really look at it, both of their situations, if you look at it, they're not actually that different. Both of them are both at home with nothing to do with their lives, with no sense of direction. But while Bojack views this as an existential crisis, Todd embraces this as an opportunity to explore and find out so much more while not having the weight of responsibilities on his hands. You can see how that contrast of them, both of them are in a similar situation, but their out view of that situation is different. Bojack is like, I have no sense of direction. This is the end. Todd is like, I have no sense of direction. Let's go on an adventure. Todd is like, oh, the glass is half full. Bojack is like, it's half empty. So the awesome thing about how creators of BoJack Horseman show the contrast that BoJack has with his foils is by putting them in literally the same scenarios or similar situations that makes the difference clearer. Both Mr. Peanut Butter and BoJack are famous celebrities in their mid 50s, and they both started literally around the same time. And they were literally starting like the same kind of sitcom. BoJack's own was horsing around, and Mr. Peanut Butter's own was dogging around. Dogging
Seriously.
around.
Seriously. Guys, seriously.
That
Seriously.
Yet, how these two developed in the Hollywood stardom scenario paints a huge contrast to their differences. The show literally pointed this out in episode 4 of season 1 called Zoe and Zelda, where the main characters were talking about these twins in Mr. Peanut Butter's own sitcom, that they had the same premise as Bojack's. The twins are so different. Zelda is described as the funny, fun-loving extrovert, while Zoe is a smart, cynical introvert. Everyone agreed without a doubt that BoJack is a Zoe and Mr. Peanut Butter is a Zelda. So they literally dedicated an episode just to show how Mr. Peanut Butter and BoJack contrast. At first, it seems like Mr. Peanut Butter and Todd are two peas in a pod, in the same pod, until you realize that unlike Mr. Peanut Butter, Todd's optimism isn't from pretending that there isn't any issue to address, but rather his mind is legit like that of a child. He's just simple minded. So, as opposed to Mr. Peanut Butter, who is just going around thinking, oh, if I stick my head in the sand, if I don't see the problem doesn't see me, therefore it doesn't exist. That's what Mr. Peanut Butter is
I'm
doing. But
screaming. I'm screaming. I'm sorry. That is just so funny.
Todd is going, well, this problem, it exists. I will face it because I can't run away from it, but I will face it with a simple, with a very simple mindedness. Like I will literally be a child about it because he can't be anything else except a child. His mind is just that one directional. Like he doesn't know how to think about things complicatedly. You get. And that's the
Yeah.
difference. Even though the results is that the both of them are optimistic and happy and extroverted and like being around people, that's the result you see on the outside. But the background reason as to why they are like that is contrasting each other. So in a way, even Mr. Peanut Butter and Todd, in deeper inspection, it feels like they're now contrasting each other, although it's not very obvious as to BoJack's, whose outlook is visually different from theirs. The awesome thing about foils is that while they highlight major characteristics by providing contrast, the best foils always have a lot of things in common with the protagonist, which makes their unique differences stand out even more. Did you guys get that? Now, a foil is not a complete opposite with no common ground at all. Usually, if you want to make your foil or if you want to create a really good foil for your protagonist, the key is to let the protagonist and the foil have common ground. The key is not to completely make them so stuck to each other, but rather that there is something about them that you can find a little bit of similarities, but then they have these one or two attributes that they just contrast each other with. Think of Batman and Joker, for example. Now, Batman and Joker are classic main protagonist and foil situations where both of them actually had a tragic past. I think they're both orphans and they both have they are both psychotic in a
Yes.
way.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
the darkness.
when you look at the two characters, the outward appearance is stark. It's like a stark difference, but yet the reason behind it is contrasting each other. And so they have common ground. That is, it's the classic Mr. Peanut Butter and Todd situation we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
In Mr. Peanut Butter and Toad, the outlook is not contrasting, but the background is the reason of the outlook is contrasting. And in Batman and Joker, the background or the reason why they are like that is the same thing, but the outlook is contrasting. So you can see, you can play with different ways to bring a foil. You can give your main protagonist and your foil similar scenarios, similar
Similar trauma.
background. Yeah, similar trauma or similar background, and then let their results be different. Or you can have the same results but different background, like different
Mm.
experiences. So it's I think if you want to write a foil character, you can go wild. There's a lot of possibilities that you can play with, and I think it's very interesting when like writers or storytellers make conscious efforts to make the foil of the main protagonist have these common grounds with the main protagonist so that we're not just like attacking, oh, this is just like two different coins, but rather two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. And people go wild for foils. Like I've never seen a series that has like we keep on regurgitating it. Wicked, Sinners. There's so many like series, movies out there. They're just full of foils.
So that is it about foil. Foils are very interesting. So now moving forward, we will talk about the ally. The ally. Who is your ally? I'm not talking about a frenemy because they exist, but an actual ally. Characters can be allies. Who is the ally to the protagonist? Let's consider that. Let's see what's that about. Every character needs an ally, and that is true about life. Nobody can do life alone, and the same is true about characters. Their stories do not exist in a void. Think about deuterogonists, which we already talked about. They are generally allies to the protagonist. But there are also other characters who aren't exactly main or even side supporting characters, but can also play the role of allies in a story. think about an ally could be a mentor, for example, or a confidant. And in BoJack's world, we see this in Mr. Cuddle Whiskers. I don't know if you remember him. When BoJack embarked on another one of his quests for relevance in showbiz industry, it was very interesting to hear the advice that Mr. Cuddly Whiskers gave him after he too had suffered a great depression from the first time that his work flopped. The work had been an attempted reality show on BoJack's life in a mockumentary style. Despite the other successes that he actually enjoyed, Mr. Cuddly Whiskers eventually left showbiz, and the words he left BoJack when BoJack sought him out for advice and perhaps another daring chance on him, he told BoJack, quote, "It takes a long time to realize how truly miserable you are, even longer to see that it doesn't have to be that way. Only after you give up everything can you begin to find a way to be happy." Rita, that is a very heavy perspective. What do you think if you were to consider these words? Do you buy into that rock bottom philosophy? Do you think that people really need to lose everything before they can actually change?
I don't think so because I have like evidence in my reality of people who just reach a point where they're like, you know what, this cannot continue. Let's do better for ourselves. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to be happy. I'm going to have a positive perspective. But they didn't really have to lose everything. They didn't have to lose their friends. They probably just have to lose a few friends, but not all. In fact, I have seen where someone has reached rock bottom and just decided to stay there, like just giving up
Hmm.
entirely. So I don't actually believe in this rock bottom philosophy. No. In
Philosophy.
my reality.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I will comment on that. When it comes to rock bottom experiences, when you reach rock bottom, the good news is that the only place left to go is upward. That's the good news because you're at the
Wait, some
bottom,
people don't go
literally.
up.
No, wait. I know some people
Yeah,
don't go up, but at that point, when you are there, of course, you can stay there for the rest of your life.
mm,
But if you keep living and you
mm-hmm,
somehow manage to come to the point where you're like, you know what, I want to progress, the only place left to move is upward. That's the
true.
good news. So I do believe that something has to give, but maybe you don't necessarily have to reach the bottom. But I do believe that the biggest changes
Mm,
come from hitting rock bottom. You can stay there. Some people don't change, it's true.
mm-hmm,
But those who like get past that, I don't want to remain there, always change,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay. So when you consider all things though, you realize Bojack really had lots of allies despite his horrible background. He had other characters who supported him and believed in him before he even knew what fame was, like Charlotte, the girl he loved and ended up in a controversial situation with her daughter, and Herb
Yes.
Kazaz. When he plunged and he started losing relevance, he had allies like Princess Caroline. Princess Caroline never gave
Mm-hmm.
up on him. She was always like,
Yes.
Bojack, you can still do it. He had Todd, he stepped on Todd toes one too many times, and Todd was even to the very end, to the last episode, Todd was like, yeah, still there with him. He had Diane, even though Diane had to part ways with him at the final season. But she stood by him. She's the reason he went to therapy and got clean and tried to so he did have allies. Even his stepsister, Hollyhock, she was like trying to believe in him. He had allies and she wanted the best for him, however. You can see how all of these different allies that Bojack had, they all occupied different levels of the characters. You have the main supporting characters like Diane and Todd and Princess Caroline, who were like real allies to Bojack. You have side supporting characters like Herb Gazaz or Charlotte at some point, who was like a really great ally for Bojack. And then you also have characters like Mr. Cody Whiskers, who also were like, they were allies to Bojack. So he did have a lot of allies despite everything that he did. However, this show highlights this recurring theme where Bojack's greatest tragedy is that he treats his allies like disposable resources. You have all these allies and you just treat them like, well, who cares if they're here or if they aren't. He just always manages to mess up every hand reached out to help him. Here's how the show used Charlotte to express this theme. In the flashback episode, The Telescope, right before Bojack had his big break, Bojack confided in Charlotte his fears of not making it in the industry. And Charlotte warned him that Making it isn't the problem. She said, BoJack, making it isn't the problem. She made a comment that dangerously foreshadowed the controversial episode Escape from LA, where BoJack thought it was the city that was corrupting him. But he somehow managed to end up in a mess in a whole different time zone. She told him, BoJack, LA is a pretty town on top of a black tar, and by the time you realize you're sinking, it's too late. 3 episodes later is where we have the episode Escape from LA, and she offered clarification to BoJack when he brought it up to her during his visit to a city in Maine. In BoJack's timeline, this was roughly 30 years after, considering the flashback. And she told him she doesn't think LA is the tar pit anymore, but rather, she said, I quote, I think you are the tar pit. It doesn't matter where you are, it is who you are that matters. I'll say that again. Say, I think you are the tar pit. It doesn't matter where you are, it is who you are that actually matters.
Yeah.
And these comments she gave to BoJack right before the issues happened. This is a comment she gave to BoJack before BoJack will go ahead and prove a point when she catches him in that compromising position with her 17-year-old daughter, Penny. So you can see how an ally turned an enemy eventually. But you can see how the creators use BoJack's allies to expatiate his story. The beautiful thing about allies is that they not only serve to push you towards your goal, but they also can be used as a warning sign, like they're sounding alarms of your error. A true ally doesn't just support you, they will point out your mistakes in hopes that you can correct them before you make irreparable damage to your destiny. This was wonderfully shown in BoJack Horseman, and it's concrete truth. Even in the Bible, there is a Proverbs that says in Proverbs 27 verse 6, it says, wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. So that's everything about the ally that we have. Rita, want to add something else?
Okay, like, yeah. Wounds from a sincere friend are better than many kisses from an enemy. Very true.
Yeah, it's right. The whole point of this podcast is to show people as we're exploring stories, we are learning something too. We're not just showing stories. Every story has a lesson because what's the point of a story if you don't learn anything? I always say it. What is the
Mm-hmm.
point of a story if you don't learn anything? Hey pages, this is B, your buzzing host. I'm putting out a quick PSA because I've realized a lot of you actually don't know that we have a home base. If you're listening to us on a standard podcast platform like YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or Amazon Podcast, you're actually getting the radio edit version, which I like to call the filtered version, or rather the clean version. Honestly, you're missing out on the best stuff. Over at our website, we host the unfiltered, extended versions of every episode. That's where Rita and I go off the rails. The banter is unhinged, the stories get personal, and nothing is off limits. Well, yeah, you'll see. If you want the full darning experience, head to the link on our show notes and become a subscriber. Trust me, it's a must listen for true fans, and it's one of the best ways to support our show. All right, let's get back to the episode. Okay, now we are going to consider love interests. Love is such a crazy
Ooh.
thing. Love interest is another role the characters can play. That's how we can also classify characters. Every story always have a love interest. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
me a love interest.
We all love the love interests.
You all love the love interest.
So love is such a crazy thing. And I remember when I was much younger having those flimsy superficial crushes and thinking my heart was going to explode from embarrassment.
Mhm.
That's what I thought love was back then because of the type of books and movies that I was consuming. Thank God for maturity because at least now I have learned to separate that self giving and sacrificial reality of true love from the fantasy of that selfish one sided infatuation. Rita, do you have any personal love story to share with us?
The
Do you
funniest
have
thing,
any
right?
funny or crazy story of a crush or infatuation that made you do something very silly? And are you willing to share that with us on the Pages podcast?
I have just one because, and that was when I was in GS1 or 2. During that period, Ben 10 just came out, and I thought I was straight during that period,
Ben
right?
10!
I had this biggest crush on Ben 10. There was nothing anyone could tell me. And literally, I would write in my diary, oh my gosh, he's so this, he's so that. And that was not like the baby Ben 10, the older one with Kevin, and like, when they got a
No
bit older, they were like
way.
teenagers.
No way. Girl. Oh my
Wait,
god.
maybe I'm getting the timeline wrong. I can't remember, but I sure know I had a like huge crush on Ben 10. And do you know that I took my diary to the hostel, and friends saw it, and they mocked the shit out of me. They
I can
mocked.
imagine, girl, you're in love with a fictional character who changes to
I
different
do
aliens.
do you know that till now I am still like, I still have crushes on fictional characters, but I just don't say it outside. I'll be keeping
Yeah.
my peace in my heart, and I still think that if she doesn't like me back, I might actually die. But the truth is, you will end up dying.
You won't.
Love will not kill somebody. The only person love has killed is Romeo and Juliet. Honestly, love will not kill you.
Love conquers it all. Love is selfless. It's kind. The Bible highlights all of it. Everything that love is. It's selfless. It covers all sins. It doesn't rejoice in the tears and the failures of other people. It
Mm-hmm.
protects. It gives the truth, but lovingly, not with condemnation. But I want you
Mm-hmm.
to be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Real.
Yeah. Okay. What is a good story without a little bit of love or romance in it? Seriously. What is a good story without that? What is it? Love makes people do interesting things. That is why the love interest is such an interesting character. People kill for love, people steal for love. However, while love interests can actually be lovers in the romantic sense, they don't always have to be. As Amanda Peterson writes, it would be a person or an animal that is your protagonist love. It could be a friend, a pet, or a family member. Writers use love interest to support protagonists and to thwart them by threatening their well being or goal. So basically, what is a love interest really if it's not just a lover? It's literally any character that the main protagonist cares too deeply for. They care for them in a way that I can't lose this person. And that can be a parent's love for their child, for example. Take, for example, Lorelai Gilmore, Gilmore Girls.
Yay, my girl.
Yeah, okay. In the story, Lorelai's love interest, she had a lot of love interests, to be honest. She's like switching guys every season.
Yep.
But all of these guys, she was able to let go of them. Like when the time came and she was like, nah, this is not my person. She was able, but if you tell her to let go of her daughter, you're killing her. You are killing Lorelai. If you tell her, forget Rory, move on with your life. Because Rory was literally her life. And in that way, Rory plays the role of love interest because she was that invested in her daughter's life. Do you guys see what I'm talking about? I know when we hear about love, we're thinking about, okay, in the romantic sense, but that's not the only type of love that exists in this world. There's so many
Yep.
kinds of love. And the strongest ones are the ones that are willing to sacrifice itself for the other person, which is why love interests are often used as catalyst characters. The catalyst is a character who knowingly or unknowingly puts events in action. Take, for example, Batman. As a child, he must have loved his parents a lot. But what made him become so extreme, as we would say, it's because he lost them. And the loss of his parents became the catalyst for who he eventually became, the Batman. So these love interests, who are also known as catalyst characters or who can be catalyst characters, they cause things to happen, which in a broad description can apply to most characters. But think of the big things they do to add to the conflict in your protagonist's life. The love interest pulls out that side of the character that the protagonist never really thought they had. When you really love somebody, you find yourself doing things like you're not a mother, but one day when you become a mother, or anybody listening, one day when you become a parent and you love your child, you find yourself like sticking to a job you normally would have just be like, I hate this job, I'm moving on. When you're alone without anybody, you're like, I know I've got family, I've got somebody that I care about at home who, like, when I come and they're like, hey, mommy or daddy is back. you'll see the smile on their face. You're like, you know what? I'm going to deal with this bad supervisor or this bad boss just a little bit longer because
Yeah.
of them. You find yourself doing
Yeah.
things that you typically wouldn't do, tolerating stuff that you typically wouldn't tolerate. You find yourself going the extra mile. The love interest pulls out that side of you, forces you to be different, forces you to be either better or worse, but it forces you to bring out portions of yourself that you didn't know you were capable of. The love interest can change the protagonist in some way. The love interest also helps us to show the internal and the external changes in our characters. It's a very good way to demonstrate the character arc. Love interest in a romantic sense is, in fact, the most popular type, but a platonic love or a filial one can also accomplish the same character development in protagonists. Think about BoJack Horseman, for example. BoJack had quite a number of love interests, each one representing something different in BoJack's life. All the love interests we're going to consider right now were not always romantically inclined love interests, but most of them were, but you will still see some that weren't. Let's start with Charlotte, for example, who was BoJack's love interest. And Charlotte represented the kind of life that BoJack really wanted and he wished he had, as we saw in episode 11 of season 1 called Downer Ending. In Downer Ending, we got to see how BoJack, when he was intoxicated, was thinking about his life. And in his head, the perfect scenario would have been that he was not too much of a coward to confess his love to Charlotte earlier on. And they would have gone on to become lovers and then married couples in a stable home. They would have had like their own house in the countryside. He would not have been so steeped into the Hollywood system. He would have had family, a daughter, he imagined. And then he thought about just this peaceful life with his wife and family. And that's like what he really ideally thought would have been a good life for him. So that's what Charlotte represented as a love interest in BoJack's life. Now, what about Sarah Lynn? What kind of love does she represent? Sarah Lynn represents the love that he groomed for his own needs. Sarah Lynn was a young girl, like maybe like in less than 10 years old when BoJack was at the height of his fame. But BoJack did something twisted with Sarah Lynn. He used her when she was in that down moment. He wasn't able to step up and be like, you know what, I'm the adult. She was also an adult also, but he was way older than her. And it was his responsibility, being someone who actually was there to see her in a formative age, could have been a responsible dad-like figure for her, but he didn't do that. Instead, he groomed her for his own needs. And eventually that caused her death. What about Princess Caroline? What kind of love does she represent for BoJack? Princess Caroline represents the love that he wasted and took for granted. No other love interest stuck with BoJack as much as Princess Caroline. And despite all the hope that she held that BoJack will become better, maybe he'll marry her, have kids with her, he just kept disappointing her. So he kept taking that particular love for granted. What about Wanda Pierce, the owl that was in a 30-year coma and woke up and like he started dating BoJack? What about she? What does she represent? What kind of love does she represent? She represents the love that BoJack thought would change him and make him a better man. Here's the thing. Nobody can really change you. I know love does bring catalyst changes in people, but in the end, it's you who has the decision to change. If you meet someone you love, you don't want to lose them, you change for yourself so that you become a better person. Because if you're trying to change to impress this person, to keep this person, chances are you will not change much. Moving forward, what about Anna Spanakopitak? She represents the love that he tried to force because he wanted to feel something and not be alone. You know, when you date people or you go after people because you're afraid to be alone? Yeah, that was Anna for BoJack. What about Gina? What kind of love does she represent? She represents the love that officially ruined him as he almost killed her. Now, you might have that love character that you don't actually really care about. It's just in your life, but you're out of control. And then you do something unspeakable and unforgivable to them. If you've been in that boat, whoever that person is, that's your Gina. That's your Gina. What about Hollyhock? What kind of love does she represent? She's one person on this list that was not romantically inclined to BoJack. So what kind of love does she represent? I think she might be the truest version of love for BoJack. Hollyhock represents the love that BoJack did not know he was capable of, That selfless love that puts others' needs ahead of yours. We saw moments where he did try to change because of Holyoke because he was afraid to hurt her. So yeah. Then lastly, what about Diane? What kind of love did Diane represent? Diane represents the love that actually made him better. She was a friend, a real friend, someone who really wanted BoJack to be better. Now, looking at all of these love interest symbolisms, Rita, which dynamic do you think is the most common trap people fall into in real life? Do we chase the fantasy like Charlotte, like wishing for that kind of love? Or do we typically take that steady support of Princess Caroline for granted? Which kind of love do you see more rampantly in people in your own personal experience?
Mm, oh no, in my personal experience, I think it's between Charlotte and Anna, and then also
Mm,
Hollylock, because we always have those set of people that like we love unconditionally. Let's say our friends or our family. Then we
mm,
also have the people that we have because we don't want to be alone. The loneliness
mm.
epidemic, actually, and then the love of what could be. For example, my latest
Yeah.
crush. Oh, any opportunity I have to talk, I always take it. Okay, so she's like in her 40s, and then she's traveling the world with her friends, and to me that's very like attractive because that's what I want to be doing. Like in my 30s, let's say late 30s or so, after you don't work finish, you've already like struggled and made all that money, right? Using the opportunity to travel with your friends, stay together with your friends, and just relax and then be happy. Yeah. I think Charlotte, Anna, and Holly Lock. I
Hollyhock.
don't think people, yeah, I feel like people do not hardly intentionally go into love thinking that they will hurt that person that they would.
Some people do. We have psychopaths.
Away! That one I cannot
hmm
comment because I don't know. I never experienced.
yeah, some people do. Rita is, but I do agree. In my own personal experience, I do agree about that Holyoke kind of love. Usually, that would come
Mm-hmm.
from maybe family or friends, people that you just care
Mm-hmm.
so much about. Like you're willing to suffer, maybe not permanently, but temporarily for them to be okay.
Compromise, at least for them to be okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that's Holyoke type of love is actually very common. But then there's always a Charlotte love. There's always that one person in the back of our head that we're thinking like, if only we could have gotten this person. What would life be like right now? If only this
Mhm.
person had said yes to me. If only this person had stuck with me. What would life be like with me right now for me?
Yeah. If only you had made that move to talk to that person. Yeah.
No, you might even have actually been in a relationship with them and maybe it just didn't work out.
True, true, true. True, true.
I also think that Princess Caroline kind of love is actually very common in the sense that we tend to take for granted
Oh.
the love that is always there for us. You know, that
Mm.
love that is like, anytime you call, the person is ready to pick. Like,
Yeah, unwavering love. Yeah.
not even unwavering, like, this person is just always available. There is something about
Mm.
having availability excessively that makes us, we humans, take it for granted. So I
Mm.
will say Princess Caroline kind of love is very common, unfortunately. I also think that the Diane kind of love is also common in the sense that you typically would have people who want you to be better. Those people who are like, come on, you can do it, you can just go for it, you can be better. And they will hold you accountable. And we all need
Mm.
a Diane in our life. We need
We
somebody
all
who's not afraid
do.
to tell us the truth, who is, yeah, like this is not okay. That kind of thing. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I've learned something today. Okay.
So, not all of these characters were directly romantically involved with Bojack. Like Charlotte wasn't romantically involved with Bojack, Polyock wasn't, and Diane wasn't. However, all of these characters occupied different spheres of love and had different effects in his life. Wanda Pierce was by far the most healthy relationship Bojack had, but even she couldn't handle his negativity and bitterness when Bojack began to spiral. She pretty much didn't have that much impact in Bojack's life, except to show that Bojack was, in fact, capable of being in a healthy relationship if he just could let himself be. The most impactful love interests in Bojack's life were actually Gina and Diane. And I would give Charlotte and Sarah Lynn an honorary mention. The end of Gina's relationship with Bojack was, in fact, the major reason why Bojack realized how far gone he was and how he needed professional help. The end of his relationship with Diane at the final episode made BoJack realize that, in fact, his actions do have consequences. Losing such a close ally, supporter, and friend like Diane, who always stood by him and believed in him and called him to higher morals, I think he finally understood just how bad his ways were. And honestly, that was a great way to use love interest role in BoJack's story by cementing a core lesson about life, action, and consequences of actions. Out of all of these love interests for Bojack, I would say the love he had for his stepsister, Holyoke, was probably the most genuine. He probably cared for her the most, and he feared losing her was actually the greatest loss that Bojack really considered that he suffered. Not even his house, not even losing his house was that bad. Just losing Holyoke was something he really showed that he was really saddened by it. She didn't die. She just cut off from him because even she realized how deeply toxic he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she was struggling to accept or manage him. So she was like, I don't want to drown in your toxicity. Bojack said so himself that when he actually lost Diane, because he first lost Holyoke before he lost Diane. So when he eventually lost Diane too, he was just too numbed from the pain and regrets to feel the heaviness of that loss. You know, when you've lost something so deep, another loss comes, it's like, ugh, you know what, doesn't matter. I'm just way too down to feel worse than this right now. This is what love interest does to the protagonist. It makes the main protagonist, or it makes the protagonist, fear loss the most. And if they do eventually lose their love interest, it opens the greatest abyss of sorrow for that character. That is the love interests. So I know we started talking about love interests, about romance and crushes, but I think it's very profound to see that's not what it's really all about. No?
Yeah. It's about a lot more than.
Yeah, it is indeed.
And honestly, Hollylock leaving too was a bit bittersweet because I could see how like he needed her, and at the same time how she also needed to leave for herself.
Mm,
Was
mm-hmm,
I don't know. It's also painful for me too. I can't even lie. Remembering it now, so it's kind of
mm,
sure.
yeah. So now we will consider the last role that characters can have. So the last character role on that character classification based on roles. And the last one is the narrator. Woohoo! The narrator doesn't get a lot of spotlight. Like when stories are being told from like
Yeah.
a third person point of view, so you've got somebody who is narrating the story. This is very true and very common in books because in books you have somebody, unless the story is being written from like the protagonist's point of view or the main character's point of view. So it's like the character who is telling the story is in the story. You can have your main character also doubling as a narrator. Something you can do that is very smart to do with stories is, especially if you have a story that is in series, your protagonist and your narrator and your main character, they can shift. This is why when you have a cast of characters, one way to highlight each character is maybe to change the role of the narrator. You can assign it to another character. The role of the main character, you can assign to the role of protagonist, you can assign to the. By shifting all of that, you have a more fluid story that doesn't feel so fixated on one person. Yeah,
Is that what Bridgerton is doing right now?
that is what Bridgerton is doing, except that the narrator doesn't shift. So let's talk about narrator. This is very interesting. Let's talk about it. So honestly speaking, the conventional narrator, in a sense, seems to be this third person outsider NPC in the story who is just providing more or less a neutral narration of the story. That's typically what we get in narrators. For example, we see that in One Piece, the guy that's always talking about Gold Roger and telling us Gold Roger did this, he died, and then he starts the Great Pirate Age where the anime left off from. Typically, that's an example of the kind of narrator we're all used to. The narrator is an NPC, faceless character who's just in the background with his voice in our head, right? Then there are special occasions where the narrator is one of the characters in the story. Avatar The Last Airbender, where Kitara is one of the narrators. She's like a character in the story, but she's also the narrator. And maybe sometimes a main character, like in the case of Bridgerton, narrator is the main character and she's also in the story. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the main protagonist who is the main character. So please go back to episode 5 to review our discussion on characters in case you've forgotten or you
Yep.
completely missed it. Go and watch the episode where we talked about main characters. An example of such character involved narrator is Madame Whistledown in Bridgerton. Then we have the more personal narrators. This is when the main protagonist is the one telling their story. And let's just say that this is the most dangerous one. And I will tell you why it's dangerous because they are unreliable narrator because their story is often skewed in their favor. Now, Rita, if you were to tell me a story of your life, you probably have moments where you make yourself look like a shining star. You're just telling the story in a very,
In a biased way.
yeah, in a very Rita-like way because you're only seeing it from your
Yeah.
point of view. If someone comes to report an incident to you and then obviously they want you to take their side. So what's it? The story is going to distort in their own benefits. And that's how the idea of propaganda works. Propaganda, it's like you come, you sell me your own side of the story, and you try to downplay or overplay the other person's story or underestimate it. And maybe make yourself look like the victim or the right person, and you sell that. That's a propaganda. So this is why a self narrator who is a main protagonist, not a main character now, but a main protagonist is a dangerous one because protagonists, by definition of their role, are already the ones through which we're experiencing the story. So if they are now the ones telling the story, it means we are only seeing the story from their point of view, which might not always be right or at least encompassing of reality. If we were all to give account of our own life story, like, can we truly be honest? Can we actually tell the story as objectively possible? In BoJack Horseman, BoJack sort of
Yeah.
acts like the narrator of his own story. If you see every time in the story of BoJack, it's actually mostly told from his point of view. Once you start the story and you end the story, it's like mostly told from. That's why at the beginning sometimes we feel sympathy for him. We feel sorry for him because everything is skewed in his point of view. The only time we get to see how things are not exactly the way he's thinking it is when the point of view shifts to other characters. Take for example Escape from LA. When Bojack would tell the story, you want to feel sorry for him because he looks so sad, like he's so sorry. But then the camera shifts to like Penny and her mom who are dealing with the after effect of what he did. And you see that, okay, he really messed up. You're not the victim here. Or the time when he strangled Gina and it's like you feel sorry for him. Oh my God, he was intoxicated. He didn't know what he's doing. And then you shift to Gina, you see how she's like dealing with this massive trauma now. And you're like, okay, no. Okay. You get. So now consider these guys. The story of BoJack Horseman is told from BoJack's point of view, right? But if that story is told from his point of view, how do we know his parent is as horrible as he's telling us they are? Maybe his story
Real.
was way worse. We don't know. Or his parents weren't as terrible as he said he was. We don't know. But he uses all of that background
Wait.
experience to justify his actions so that he can come off as a victim. Issue is, since the story is told mostly from his point, we never ever got to hear his mom tell the story or his dad tell the story. We only ever get the story from his point of view when you talk about his background. So, what is true? Although it's not like it's out of impossible that his parents could not have been horrible people. It's just all we have is his point of view. That's all we have. I think an interesting thing that happened was Todd, for example, his mom kicked him out of their house because he was obsessed with video games and he refused to be serious. And his mom and stepdad were trying to push him to become responsible. Yeah, he was 17 or 18, I don't know. But he argued that he was just a child and he didn't know what like, I was just a child. But yeah, you're a child, but you need to be a little bit responsible. You can't stay in your room all day and play video games and just like live life. And when the time he got to confront his stepfather, and his stepfather was trying to say, look, we didn't kick you out because we hated you. We just thought you needed to get serious. I know it might be a little bit extreme to kick out your child who is 18 and obsessed with video games, but thanks to that experience, Todd became somebody who was responsible. Now imagine his parents just kept leaving him to stay at home all days watching video game, refusing to study or go get a job or just do anything else. Then what would have become of him? Would he have had this rich experience that he ended up having? I think the problem is them not going out of their way to check up on him after they kicked him out. They didn't really know what was happening with him. So I think maybe that's where most of the grime is. But in the end, it's okay. When we get to hear the story from his stepfather's point of view, maybe they were harsh, definitely, but they weren't, it wasn't coming from a place of hatred. But when you would hear the story from Todd, sometimes it feels like, oh my God, his parents are horrible. They are like terrible creatures. He doesn't exaggerate it that much, but just sometimes when he tells a story, it feels okay, these were just like really horrible parents in a way. But I think the maturity we got to see in Todd is that he understood eventually and he even got to appreciate it. He said, yeah, thanks for kicking me out because that's the best thing you guys ever did for me. You get what I mean?
Growth.
So,
We love growth. It was growth.
growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the question I'm thinking is that can we really put it past BoJack after that episode that we got where he got the chance to tell his own account of events regarding Sarah Lynn's death during their bender? Can we really put it past BoJack to actually be exaggerating about his parents when we consider like that episode where he went on a bender with Sarah Lynn and BoJack finds out that she's dead or rather she passed out and he waited 17 extra minutes
Minutes. Nah, that was irresponsible.
so that he could
That was
create an alibi for
irresponsible.
himself because he didn't want to be directly connected to the death because he didn't want to explain that, okay, I took her on a bender and she overdosed and then she passed out. So he
Mm.
just pretended that she was not with him and she just called him and then he got there and found her dead. That's what he did. Meanwhile, that 17 extra minutes actually could have saved her life if he had just placed the
Yeah.
911 call immediately. So someone who is capable of doing that, is it impossible to think that maybe sometimes when he talks about his parents that he's exaggerating?
Hmm.
Hmm.
Hmm. Exactly. I don't know. His mom, she doesn't sit right to me though. Like even when she moved into his house and she was not of her right mind. Like she wasn't in her
Mm,
right mind.
right.
She was still very. I don't know. He might have exaggerated a bit, but I still
Mm,
feel like they were terrible people. The fact that Abujak is the way he is,
yeah.
that means they did not do a good job as parents. Shikena. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to circle back on that because there are times when parents actually do their best for children and the children still end up not good.
Yeah, that happens too. But still,
You,
her
you
in his
know,
house did not. Yeah, we've already seen that she's not exactly a good person per se. I feel like
yeah,
if
let's
she was in that situation with BoJack too, she would have left that babe to die first. In fact, she wouldn't even call 911 sef. Just run and go. As far as she doesn't want to take responsibility for in the situation entirely. That's
Okay,
how I
there
feel,
was
sure.
this moment. I would not completely agree with that. There was this moment when Bojack's dad was cheating with the house
Mm,
help, and then she got
mm,
pregnant. And Bojack's dad didn't know how to deal with it, and he came to her and he confessed to sin. He was crying and begging her that she should please help him get rid of the baby. Can you imagine get
mm.
rid of the baby? And then she looked at him, but she could have just been like, you know what, I want a divorce. Die, get out my house. Okay, maybe she didn't get a
Exactly.
divorce. Maybe she didn't get a divorce immediately because I don't know. Maybe she was just so used to the toxicity of the system of that marriage or that relationship. But she was like, she considered the house up. And you would expect that, like typical Nigerian, you slept with my husband, now you're pregnant. They will beat. They will beat.
She said, well, now you're pregnant. I still know it's her fault
Eh,
that she got pregnant. Yeah.
well,
So wait, what
like they
happened to the
will.
baby? I don't remember. I don't recall this.
That's Hollyhock. The baby's Hollyhock.
Oh my,
Exactly.
I'm sorry, guys.
Given how Bojack has portrayed his mother, you'll be expecting her to do something worse. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, okay,
Do you see?
okay, okay.
Okay. So in BoJack Horseman, there's always 2 or 3 sides of stories running alongside the main story, which is actually BoJack. So Raphael, which is the creator of BoJack Horseman, the showrunner, he referred to the main story of each episode as the A-side story. So when a story starts, there's always an A-side story. Typically, throughout the series, the A-side story, which is the main story, is BoJack's story. Then there'll be other minor narratives told from other characters' point of view, and those ones become like B-side or C-side or D-side stories, depending on how many other sub-narratives are being woven together with the main story. So Yeah, the main A side story depends on which character's point of view the story is being told from, and that character becomes the narrator of that episode. We get a couple of episodes that are typically more about Mr. Peanut Butter, or some episodes that are more about Princess Caroline. Like Ruthie is one of my favorite episodes that was more about Princess Caroline and when she had like that. Do you remember when she was trying to have a baby with that her boyfriend
Y-
Raphael
y-
Stilt?
Yeah, I remember vaguely.
Yeah, and then she ended up having a miscarriage, and then after she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm strong, I'm everything," and then she just went to her car and she sobbed and cried.
Like broke down. Ah,
Girl,
Princess character. Ah,
I actually cried with her. I was like, damn, because
yes. Do you know right now, remembering it, I have tears in my eyes.
like when
Ah,
you see a character that is always strong, I can do it, and you see them break. There's something
yes.
heartbreaking about that. I was like, oh, Princess Caroline. And the worst part is that in that tears, she had no one to comfort her. Meanwhile, when
Yeah.
others are in their dark moment, she's there to comfort them.
She's
But
always there
in
for
that,
them. Yes.
yeah, in that darkest moment, she was like alone. In that story, she was the main character and she was the narrator of that story. And we got to see for the first time life through our own lens. And BoJack and the
Mm.
other characters were like side characters in that story. So this is how the whole series does this whole shifting. Mostly it's BoJack who is the main narrator, but other times it would pan to other characters and they become narrators. Do you remember that episode? Hollywood stars, what do they know? Do they know things? Let's find out. So peanut butter. That particular episode was about Mr. Peanut Butter and the story was told completely from his point of view. And you can see the vibe is
Yeah, I
different. Like it's
remember. He was
really
the star.
yeah, it's really hip hoppy. It's like really active. It's like you get the Mr. Peanut Butter energy from that episode. Whenever the episode switches to another character, the style of the pacing is different. When it's mainly BoJack, it's more comedic and gloomy. When it's Princess Caroline, it's more yes, get it. When it's Mr. Peanut Butter, it's like yeah, life is good. And then when it's Diane, it's like really depressing. Like Diane, only Diane's episodes is really that's where you get some of the deeper like it's just deep. And then when
Yeah.
it's Todd, it's chaotic. It's one day you're in the sea, the next thing you're in the sky, and next thing is what's going on? These Todd episodes are so crazy. What is happening? It's like, yeah. So you get to see even like the personalities of the characters reflected in the episodes as it shifts to them as the main characters and the main narrators of the story. It's really nice.
That's interesting. Very. That's amazing, actually. I
Yeah.
didn't look at it in this way when I was watching it. I was just like, now that I'm hearing it from like your analysis, it's very interesting. Really. Every single
Yeah.
time that we talk about BoJack Horseman, analyze it in this podcast, I just realize how of an iconic series it actually is. And
Yeah.
everyone should watch it and experience it after listening to this. I feel like if you're watching it regularly, you just okay. Then when you now listen to analysis and then you rewatch it again, it has more
Mm.
impact on
Yeah.
you when
It
you're trying to like
clicks.
identify. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, girl. Oh my gosh. Doing God's work.
Okay, slow down. I beg go slow
Gosh.
down. Anyways, so the show did this brilliant thing where sometimes the main narrator is switched and it could suddenly become a story from the perspective of the other main characters. As I said before, it could be Princess Caroline, it could be Todd, it could be Diane or Mr. Peanut Butter, with BoJack playing a side or even a background character in your story. Every time this switch up happens, you always feel the difference in the tone of the story. A story about Princess Caroline will be lively, uplifting, and have this energetic, optimistic beat to it only to end with a downside which reflects the reality of her life as a character who works herself to the bone only to end up sad and alone when she gets back home. A Diane's story is filled with criticism, exasperation, suspicion, and will sometimes end on that depressing note with a little bit of hope. That's Diane's story. Then this really captures the essence of Diane's character. She's always depressed, but then she's always, I'm hopeful despite being depressed. Yeah. Then there's Todd's story, which is usually chaotic, as I said, with a little bit of too much happening at the same time, with lots of confusions and craziness. But somehow at the end, everything seems to work out fine. And that's really what Todd is all about. Meanwhile, Mr. Peanut Butter's own story will feature a lot of busyness, just like Todd's, also very messy. But unlike Todd's own, there's always this nagging feeling that there's something more important that he's failing to address. So The primary role of a narrator is to tell a story. This is the most fundamental role, as the narrator is the one who recounts the events of the plot. That's the beauty of fiction. Whether it's an unreliable narrator or a perfect foil, these roles aren't just literary tools, they are reflections of how we interact with the world and those around us. Rita, would you like to add anything about the narrator before we close?
Okay. I think the narrator deserves more, right? I think we should be more aware of when we are watching or rather reading. We should be like more aware of who is telling the story and then why the
Right.
story is being told that way. And I feel like to
Right.
heighten the experience. Just realizing all these things now is making it remembering the episodes actually give it more impact in my head. So yeah.
Anyways, this is the end of today's episodes. We've officially wrapped up this last recording that we're doing. This was great. It was very fun. Thanks for listening to the final portion of Characterization, which is about character roles. We started with character classification by development, and we've rounded up with character classification by their roles, and it was very fun. Oh my, it's been one great ride. It has been an incredible season, and it fills me with so much joy to have shared this journey with all of you, our listeners. Across 11 episodes, we've unpacked so much, and I want to give a massive shout out to those of you who have been with us since episode 1. You are the stars of the show, and we'll never take the gift of your attention for granted. That is why we are here to stay and bring to you more content in the future. Whether you've been entertained, educated, or inspired, we want to keep the conversation going. Connect with us on X, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Thread. And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can also find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or Apple Podcasts at pagespodcast_HQ. Stay tuned there for all of our big announcements and creative insight. Pages Podcast is your home for fueling your creative storytelling endeavors, so don't be a stranger. We wait to see you on the next chapter. Bye for this season. Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.